warm introduction. And also, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak to you all. Our presentation and paper title is Dewey Meets the Machine. Of course, we're referring to John Dewey, guided inquiry using generative AI for students ages 7 to 11. And I'll be joined by my colleague, Dr. Jill Raisor. So just a quick outline of our presentation here. We are going to start with a little introduction. Uh, we'll talk about a little bit about our methodology, but we'll focus mostly on the history and capabilities of generative AI. Even more time on Dewey's model of inquiry, for those of you who are not familiar with it. And then we'll talk about some modeling and guidance from our research and the thought that we put into this, that we believe is important for us to have for children as they use generative AI tools. And then we'll give you an example as well, what it might look like. In fact, the example that we're going to share with you is from kindergarten, believe it or not. And then we'll share some final takeaways after that. So just a quick introduction here. Generative AI, as we know, hit the public scene at least in 2022, very, very recently, and it is the buzz right now. It is probably one of the biggest innovations since possibly social media, and all of the social changes that came with it. And it does share some similarities in terms of its public impacts with social media, in the sense that social media hit the scene with Facebook and Twitter and all of the other socials. And we really didn't have a grasp of what changes it was going to have for our children and the way that they interact with each other. And in fact, what we see from the research is that the technology itself drove changes in society rather than the other way around. And so what we hope to use generative AI for is differently driving, how generative AI is used in education instead of the technology driving us. It's a very important topic, we believe, because at least here in the United States, and I'm sure other places in the world, there are persistent achievement gaps between um, particularly white students and students of color, and then students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. We think that and based on the research that we've done, that this can be a bridge. Generative AI can be a bridge to help students, if we train them right, to use the technology to help guide their inquiry process. Inquiry, of course, is just part of being a child, and you'll hear more from Dr. Raisor about this. She specializes in early childhood education. That's not my area of expertise, but she will give you some unique insights on that. So the methodology that we used was modeled by White and Marsh, and the research question that we asked when using that model will give you. We won't focus on that heavily because you can look up the source and also at our paper and see how we did that. But the the research question is, what do prominent developmental learning theories have to say about the use of Gen AI in primary school? If you look at most of the research on generative AI, especially the research that's coming outside of the field of education, but focused on uses in education, they don't use a whole lot of learning theories. And that's problematic for us because we firmly believe that we don't have to throw out the learning theories that we've used for over 100 years, that uh, theorists like Dewey can help us understand how to use generative AI in a way that is beneficial to our students. So we've talked a little bit about the history of generative AI, you know, in terms of when it arrived, but in fact, AI has been uh, uh, part of our education sphere for many, many years. But of course, we know that the first personal computer dates all the way back to the 1960s, very, very rudimentary. But the algorithmic technologies in it and the machine learning that came later on, especially with the development of the internet in the 90s and search engines, and later by Apple's Siri, where we were able to ask basic questions and help it navigate our screen. AI has been with us for a good long time, but there's something very different in generative AI. We have the ability to uh, not just use it to assist tasks that we're doing, but in fact help us improve our thinking process and also to create things that we don't have to, the more menial parts of of the thinking process, so that we can spend more of our time in those higher level thinking process of evaluation, analysis, and creation. So there's a few different ways that the generative AI literature talks about the technology and its uses. It divides it pretty much between the uses for teachers in education and the uses for students. Teachers, of course, can, according to literature, can use generative AI to create lesson plans, to help with administration. And if you've ever been in a classroom, you know that the majority of your time is spent in planning and administrative tasks. And unfortunately, that takes a lot of time away from students. We know that students need one-on-one attention, and this is what the literature says can help free up teachers to interact with students more and help them use the chatbots and to help drive their own learning. The other aspect of the research talks about how students can use it. And the majority of the articles that we reviewed looked at generative AI as and I speak about generative AI broadly. There are many, many programs right now, over 200 at the last count that I had. Um, but the majority of programs have one thing in common, and that is the chatbot. The ability for us to interact with a chatbot through the technology in real time. And it's getting to the point now where programs are weaving in so many anthropomorphic qualities that it really does, in many respects, feel like you're speaking to a human being. And so you can ask the technology like ChatGPT, to our last presenters research uh, questions, and you get responses that are sound like they're from a human. They're very friendly, and they have very helpful questions that help drive thinking, and they give responses in real time. Now, unlike Siri, by the way, which we could also ask, or Alexa, uh, there's not a delay. Usually there's if you are delayed in your thinking and your speech pauses, the technology interrupts you. But in fact, generative AI programs now are patient, and they will wait for you to finish your response and then give you a real-time response uh, to help you out.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to chime in on the next couple of slides here. So, what Dr. Mattison and I really wanted to do was we keep hearing generative AI is so new. And we said, but we know what best practices, we know what the prior theorists in education have told us is best practice. So, are trying to merge those two worlds. So, we thought with engaging in philosophies and the theories on learning that we can explore through that foundation how generative AI can and should be used in education. We really want it to be able to be used to help children develop those critical thinking skills. But we also don't want it to become so over reliant on technology, especially for younger children. Our age group for the presentation was 7 to 11-year-olds, so especially for those 7, 8-year-olds. So we're going to walk you through in the next couple of slides about how we can use what we know kind of those founding people of education taught us, how we can apply that and how we think they would want us to apply what they put forth to the evolving world of education. Okay, so we started with John Dewey, and what he puts forth in his model for inquiry is simply identify the problem. What do we want to do? Explore it, generate and test hypothesis, and then reflect. So again, this is very reflective of his learning by doing model, which we appreciated. And throughout this, what really resonated with me was that Dewey didn't say just let them do it on their own. That is not what he put forth. What he put forth was the importance of the teacher always being the supportive person, always in the background, always present, and even modeling for children what this looks like. So we'll talk in just a second about different ideas for that. But Dewey's model still applies to generative AI, that you're still exploring that problem, you're testing, you're reflecting on it, seeing how it works. But I think really what resonated with me here, especially in early childhood, is that we have that adult guiding us along the way.
Thank you, Dr. Raisor. And if I may add also, one of the things that we found in the literature when we were writing our paper, and we encourage you to read this portion, is that there's a lot of research in cognitive psychology on this idea of what really is a scientific process. That's what Dewey is really laying out here, of that being possible. In the age groups that we're looking at, it just looks different, right? Than if you're thinking of Piaget's formal operation stage, where children are able to engage in abstract thought and concepts. Children ages 7 to 11 are not ready for that. But they don't need to be to use generative AI. They can use it in a way that applies to them. We know from the theorists, including Lev Vygotsky, that children have the ability to use logic and reason from ages 7 to 11. It's just much more aligned with what Vygotsky calls elementary processes, meaning there's far less than they can do than older kids, but they can still use it.
Dr. Timothy, 5 minutes left.
Thank you. Um, Dr. Raisor, you want to just talk quickly about this?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the time reminder. So, through this process, what we believe is that it needs to be this gradual release model. And so, at first, just fully supervising the students, especially younger students and even older students who might, in general, be curious but not sure how to use the new technology. So, we go from a fully supervised mode to a semi-supervised mode where we're kind of in that background monitoring for young children. And then also, I know in the prior presentation, we talked a little bit about hallucinations and we'll have some of that in our final thoughts, but that's why. So that if something crazy comes up, we are there to let children know. I talk to my own children about you still have, and that's why that critical thinking part is important. You still have the ability to say, that's not right. And so that supervision is very important at first, fully supervised, then we can kind of and then the idea is that hopefully as they mature and cognitively develop and have those critical thinking thoughts and processes and skills, that they would be able to use it independently as a responsible adult.
Thank you, Dr. Rajic. This is an example that we came up with using Common Core standards here from the United States. You may have a correlate depending on the country that you're from, but the activity is let's go to the zoo, and it's using a generative AI tool called Microsoft Designer. And when you read our paper, you'll see that there's more detail given here. But the problem is the animals get out. The zoo needs our help to get them back in the cages, and children have to think through the different sizes of the animals and what cages that they'll go into. This is absolutely aligned to the mathematical standards for this level, which is kindergarten. And then the teacher engages in a process of asking questions to get and also asking students to hypothesize what animals do you think would go where and why, and then putting up a picture using Microsoft Designer of animals next to each other in their relative sizes, and then having students reflect upon whether the hypotheses that they created, which animal should go where, whether those worked out based on the sizes of the animals.
I'll start with this slide. Our whole point in this presentation was just that we can have a deep thought about educational theory and research and how to help children, how to help teachers make those reasons informed decisions on how to incorporate generative AI in their classrooms. Also, we wanted to really relay the true connection here between the importance of teaching critical thinking and the use of AI to supplement learning. Our firm belief is that generative AI can never replace the human in the classroom. The human, the teacher, has a very vital role in child development, and that generative AI should always be used as supplemental and not a replacement. And so our thought here was, we hope that teachers take it and run with it. We hope that they can really expand what they can do with children in the classroom. And again, putting it layered with that, how we structure that modeling process for children, I think is really important. Go ahead, Dr. Mattison.
The one thing I wanted to stress in the slide is that teachers really do know best. So I think the best way that we can support them, from my background as a school leader, is giving them professional development and practice. I think that's the most critical thing that teachers will need to be able to use this inquiry process, and also as part of their preparation programs, that they really understand the theory. Different programs here in the U.S. stress theory at different levels. Here at USI, we spend a lot of time on theory so that students know why they're making decisions, uh, the rationale behind decisions in the classroom from day to day. So we thank you so much for your time and attention, and we welcome any questions.